Okay. So what's the InterviewReady series about? Interview processes for software developers can be overwhelming, especially in times like these. With the pandemic, we are literally at the mercy of our company, and like, what if we get retrenched? We would need at least 3 months to like take out all our data structures and all of our concepts and start revising all over again to do an interview. So that's and also a lot of us are working in really like toxic workplaces where there is sexism, or there are some biases and other kinds of toxicity. And we continue doing working in such places because we feel that we won't get a job anywhere else, and it's tiring and scary to prepare for an interview as well. So the solution that I am trying to come up with is to always be interview ready. So even if you're not looking for a new job right now, you're not willing to change your company, but you can always be interview ready, because anything can happen at any point in time. So how we plan to do this is by raising awareness of how to prepare, get some tips from fellow women who have successfully managed to switch companies, switch jobs, and just to be on top of things all the time. So in this InterviewReady series, we are focusing on front-end development. And before we start, let me just introduce myself and my co-host here. So I'm Saloni. For today, I will be playing mainly an interviewer role. So I'm a software developer. I have about 6 years of software development experience. I love cleaning code. Like, I love tasks at jobs when I get to refactor and like just clean up code. It just gives me a lot of satisfaction. And I am actually the creator of the InterviewReady series. So yep. Next we have Avery. So yep, Avery as well. She's also a software developer. She also has about 5 years of experience, and she recently did several front-end interviews, and therefore she's a great host for the show.
Yeah.
Yep. So before we begin, like dive into the front-end questions, this is our hashtag. Please use this if you like have any questions, or if you want to share some of our content from today's session on Twitter or Instagram or anywhere. And if you have any questions, you can ask us on Twitter or in this Zoom chat as well. So please do encourage you guys to ask questions, because then we would know which direction to lead in during the interview as well. Yep. So Avery, I will hand over to you for some brief.
Cool. Thank you, Saloni. So like what Saloni mentioned, I recently just interviewed at 3 different companies for a front-end position. So while my memory is quite fresh, we thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to do an interview-ready series for this front-end interviews. And so all of these 3 interviews, along with other front-end interviews that I've had in the past, they all roughly have similar processes, and they all consist of a mixture of following. Next, please. An HR screening at the very start. So presumably to check if you are a real human and if you can do, basic tasks, followed by a take-home test like Compatibility or HackerRank, and then a tech screening. So not all companies do this, but then they mainly ask you questions based on what your take-home test solution is. And if you don't have this round, they will likely ask those questions in one of the 2 pair programming rounds. These rounds will likely have a lot of hands-on and like coding, like live coding stuff. So these are actually pretty important. And the last one would be the engineering manager or the bar raiser round. I will spend a bit less time talking about this one, because this one is, to me, it's a more generic round with less front-end focus, and it's more sort of a behavioral interview that has already been covered in the previous, I think 2 sessions ago, the behavioral interview ready series. So there's these rounds or like processes. And then at the end, I also want to talk about what kind of questions you can ask your interviewers. So next slide, please. So this is the take-home tests and test screening bit. The take-home tests often consist of 1 to 3 JavaScript problems to solve. They range from your typical data structures to algorithm type tests. So similar to those that you practice on say, LeetCode or HackerRank, to JavaScript concepts like scopes and closures. So my previous company gave me 3 standalone JavaScript files to work with within the week. And 2 of the 3 companies that I recently interviewed with gave me 2 problems on Codility to solve within an hour. So I would say most companies, they have their different ways of testing you for this round. So I guess, you can kind of, I think Saloni has this practice of practicing a LeetCode question maybe every month or every week, maybe. And so you can kind of practice like this, or you can do it like me, which is before my interviews, ramp up on all these questions. I mean, whatever works, right? So with websites like Codility, the interviewer gets a full hour recording of your work, which, I mean, this is kind of just like an FYI. I don't think they watch every minute of it, but they definitely kind of skim through to see if you maybe grab an answer from Stack Overflow, or, just kind of copy and paste, which is not what you want to do. So if you achieve the passing rate for this take-home test, the company will likely want to go through your code with you in the next round. So then this is our first mock interview demo round. And next slide, please. I think I might have missed out on some slides. Yeah, okay, actually. So this will be our first mock interview demo round. And in this round, I will be the interviewer and Saloni will be the interviewee. So are we ready?
Yes,
cool.
I hope I remember the code that I wrote in the take-home test.
Okay. So I'll flash the question first, and then we'll move on to the we'll show in the next slide. We will show the question and the solution of the take-home test. So question is, this is the solution that you've submitted for one of our online tests. Can you describe the thought process when writing the code?
Okay.
So are the texts big enough? Actually, I'm not sure if people. I can see it. Please write in the chat if you guys can't see the text, but I assume people can. So, yeah. So Saloni, please.
Yeah. Okay, so just for me to just recall and also talk to the audience a little bit. This is the group Anagrams question. So yeah, given an anagram like EAT, T10, I would have to group it up into words that have the same characters in it. So NAT is both in NAT as well as 10. So that's why these are grouped together. Similarly for 8, EAT, and T. So yep. So now back to my interviewee mode. Okay, so yep. Yep, hello Avery. Yeah, so when I was working on this question, what the first thing that went through my mind was basically what anagrams are. When I read the question, it wasn't really that easy to understand the meaning. So, but I understood that anagram means words which have the same characters. So NAT and even 10 as NAT. So the first thing I'm thinking is maybe group them up in that manner. So when I iterate through the array strings, I would like to just check if all of them have maybe put them in a map, because a map is more of a key value thing. So if they both, so EAT and TEA, if I sort them first, they would then end up in the exact same word, right? So EAT becomes AET, and then T also becomes AET if sorted. So then they can be grouped together. So that was my idea. So then I just started looping through it So for my first string, I split it up into characters and then sort it, join it back. So it has become sorted. It has become AET. And then I would either put it into, so my map that I meant is just in JavaScript is just represented as such. And I have now, so if it doesn't already exist, I would put it in to the map as is. If not, if it already exists, I would just add it on to the array. So it's essentially it is AET, the value would be EAT, comma, TEA. TEA, correct. So yeah, so this anagrams object would eventually be the result, and then eventually I just put it in the form it wants to be written, which is an array of array. That was my idea.
Cool. That sounds good. Actually, yeah, that's pretty much it for the mock interview demo, for the first mock interview demo round. And moving on to like the analysis bit, which is how Saloni did for this mock interview. I really liked how she pointed to the specific parts of the code to explain explicitly like what she was doing and the visualizations that she was giving. I think during this, or at least in my previous tech screening rounds, when I explain what the code is, I will share my screen and sort of like live on the spot type out, you know, what, how the map would look like in different stages of the code. So in a sense, that gives the interviewer an easy way to sort of follow what you're explaining as well. I mean, I think so. What we're not doing now because you know she's kind of sharing the screen. She's sharing the slides, but basically for this round, you want to make sure that your explanation is very clear, so that your interviewer can follow through really well. Yeah. So moving on to the next round, which is the pair programming round 1. So there's 2 pair programming rounds, like I mentioned earlier on. Actually, sorry, next slide, please. In these 2 pair programming rounds, there will be, they're essentially testing you on your skills as a front-end developer. So there's a ton of topics that they can talk about. I don't really have time to go through all the topics, so I will pick out 3 topics to focus on. Next slide, please.
Yep.
So the first topic I'll talk about is testing. And a lot of companies like to ask about this, and rightfully so, because testing is very crucial in software engineering. They like to ask, next slide, please. Well, why do we write tests? So this is fairly straightforward. I mean, we write tests because we want our code to work, and we want to ensure that as we continue to build more features, that our existing codes don't break. Followed by, do you practice test-driven development? I know companies, I mean, there's several companies out there that kind of really strive for this practice. I personally don't. And if you don't lie about it. I would say, be honest. You can say that, you know, you understand that TDD is a programming style where you write and run some basic tests for the program that you want to build. And then you start coding until the test pass. You can say that you understand the concept is like this, but you don't code this way for whatever reason. I personally don't, because I've tried this method before and I end up having to rewrite my tests because I refactor my code quite a lot, and I don't want to do double work. I also ended up focusing on, sometimes I also end up focusing on making the test pass to the point where I don't think I write very good code. The interviewer just wants to know if you understand the concept. Whether or not you code like this is fine, as long as you have a very good justification. The next question is, what kind of tests have you written before and with what library? So I think this will reflect on how much you know about tests. So there's unit tests that covers an isolated part of a program. So usually a specific method or like a component in React terms. And this may or may not require, for example, mocking to simulate external behavior. And you can say like, if you do, that you've used technologies such as Jest, Enzyme, or React testing library to work with, to write unit tests. There's also integration tests that assert that the method or component that you are writing interacts with the environment that is going to integrate it in well. Also the same, there's like Jest, there's Mocha, there's Enzyme, such libraries that you can write integration tests with. And then there's also functional or end-to-end tests. And this, at least on the front end side, this usually tries to simulate user behavior on the program. So like on your website from start to finish. And then this follows a happy or unhappy path. So for example, and a happy path would be a user coming to a page and wanting to buy like a subscription to Spotify, for example, and then they will kind of click through and then go through the payment page, key in their details. So that whole thing, essentially trying to simulate this behavior, is an end-to-end test. And if you've written it before, I mean, I use technologies like Cypress, WebDriver IO to write stuff like that. So if you've used other kinds of technologies before as well, you can mention those. So along with these three front-end tests, the other kind of front-end tests we have are visual regression testing, which is where you capture UI screenshots of your page and compare them to see if your code has changed too much just by adding one feature. Or you have a performance or page speed testing. There's also cross-browser compatibility testing, because some users of your product could still use browsers that are really, really old, and it doesn't support some JavaScript features, for example. So these tests can usually, these tests usually are run overnight. At least in my previous companies, we do this because they take a very long time to run, and there's several old browsers out there to run this on. And the last one is how much coverage is ideal. So next slide, please. So there isn't a right or wrong answer for this. I would say every company and every project is different. I do like to say that the average percentage is around 85 to 90, or maybe kind of 80 to 90 based on my past projects. In my previous team, we don't really put as much focus on this number as we do in our actual code quality. We keep our functions small so that they can be easily tested, and then we test against the actual functionality that the functions provide, rather than ensuring if the if-else branches are covered. So before moving on to the next topic, which is optimization, I saw that Eileen has a question. What is a good tool for cross-browser compatibility testing? In my previous company, I just joined my new company, so I'm not entirely sure what kind of tools they have for this. But in my previous company, we use BrowserStack, because BrowserStack has a lot of, I don't know what the actual word is. BrowserStack has a lot of like virtual VMs, I think, for the different browser versions, and then we use WebDriver IO that essentially kind of controls the user movement in the browser to set this whole thing up. But the main technologies would be BrowserStack and WebDriver IO. I hope that answers the question, Eileen. So moving on to the next topic. The next topic is optimization. This can mean several things. There can be JavaScript bundle optimizations. So there are several ways you can optimize your JavaScript bundle. One of the easiest ways you can do this is to minify or uglify your JavaScript bundle, which essentially just means like, converting all your variable names, function names to like a single character, or removing the white spaces. So these should kind of shave at least a couple kilobytes off. If you use Webpack, then the split chunks feature, which removes duplicate dependencies, could work as well. That could shave off more bytes. And then also the side effects feature could also, that one enables tree shaking, which removes code that isn't used. So that can also help with optimizing your JavaScript bundle size. There's also page speed optimization. So optimizing for page speed is quite simple. Essentially, the idea is you just need to reduce the amount of data being transmitted over the servers when you load your website, and this includes your scripts and assets. By scripts, I mean your JavaScript bundle scripts and assets like images or videos or SVGs and stuff. So for JavaScript bundles, JavaScript scripts, actually no, sort of in general, you can apply code splitting so that the page that the user is on only loads the code that is required to run the page. I mean this by, for example, if you are not logged in, like if you're on, I don't know, if you're on facebook.com, for example, if you're not logged in, the page shouldn't be loading scripts that are required for a logged in page, you know, stuff like this, or loading below, lazy loading the stuff below the code and stuff like that. You can also consider server-side rendering, which renders content faster, but not necessarily interactive. So this kind of allows the user to perceive that the page speed is rather fast. And moving on to assets, like you can reduce the file size of your image or SVG assets. And to reduce the file size, next slide, please. I like to, for images, I like to use Image Optim. And for SVGs, I like to use SVG OMG. These two tools are actually really, really handy. I use them all the time when I'm working on front-end projects. They really kind of compress your assets down to like maybe even they kind of shave off 60% of the file size on average, which is actually quite a lot. And yeah, I find these two tools really handy. And one other method you can try is to use image sprites. This will reduce the number of network requests for images because you're only loading one huge image and then using sort of CSS to grab the different kinds of images within this big image. Next slide, please. The last optimization is React performance optimization. And this is actually one of the more common ways to optimize optimize performance in React is to ensure that there aren't any unnecessary renders. And with this, you can utilize should component update, to tell React if a component needs to be updated or not. Otherwise, you can use memoization such as react.memo or use memo hook. The third topic is React hooks. So a lot of companies out there use React these days because it is a well-designed framework and there are a lot of community support and knowledge about it, which makes problem solving way smoother. Hooks are also pretty useful and customizable, so your interviewer would likely want to test how much you understand it. And with that, we will do a mock interview demo with the React hooks round. And this time, Saloni will be the interviewer and I will be the interviewee. So I will need to, because I'm actually using a and before actually, if you go back to the previous slide, sorry, before we move on to the mock interview round, these are pretty much the topics that I mainly focused on when revising for my interview. I think if you want to take a screenshot of this and sort of do your own research and reading, definitely feel free. I am just going to join the, I'm just going to join the meeting so that I can share my screen while I do the live coding round for the mock interview session. I hope this works. Okay. Oh, I think Saloni, you will need to stop sharing the screen so that I can share my screen. Is that possible? Let me try. Oh, damn it. Sorry, give me a second for some technical difficulties. I need to restart my Zoom to be able to share my screen. Really sorry.
It's okay. Maybe we can like move on to the next round. I mean, you shouldn't be restarting.
No. It's just Zoom. It's just restarting Zoom. So I am coming on now again. We actually very much like ahead of time. So no, is that the right way to say it? So we are still quite, early. Like we still have time, essentially. And video. Cool. So if I share my screen, can you see this? Okay, yep. I think you can. Great. Yes. So, okay.
Okay, so the question that we are going to ask is, hello, Avery. Can you build a custom hook that gives you the previous value of a variable?
Okay. So this is the code that I will be working with, right? I can see that I can see that there's this app that has a state counter that has a default value of 0. And then this is the use previous hook that I need to implement down here. And then here is just rendering what the value of the state variables are, followed by a button element that increments the counter. So if I increment it right now, it still shows the same number because it is returning the value straight up. But to implement this, I would need to basically store the value of the current. I would need to store the value of the current value that comes in here. And to do that, I will use ref. I will use useRef because if I use useState, it will update the component because React re-renders the component every time there's a state change. So I'm gonna say previous equals useRef undefined because it should, the initial value should be undefined anyway because there isn't a previous value. And I will return what is in the useRef, which is, oh no, why is it? Oh, I need to do React useRef. Okay, so right now it should reflect correctly because previous is undefined all the way. And then I will need to I'm gonna use a use effect that, yeah, that will depend on the value, and then every time the value changes, I will set use previous to the current value. I think this is it. Yeah. So that every time there's a use effect that will run, and then every time value changes, I just update the current with previous value. So I think this should be it. Yeah. Okay. I
Nice.
think this is pretty much it. So I'm gonna submit my solution.
Nice.
Okay.
Maybe I can give like some analysis, like how we do after every round, like while you're still showing your screen. So I'll make it pretty quick because I know you have battery issues. So
Yeah.
I really liked that you were speaking your mind as you were looking at the code. So like you went through, okay, so this means the default is 0 and things like that. And I have to now implement this, and then you implemented it. And while coding, you were actually explaining that I have to set the previous one as the current previous and things like that. So yeah, that's really good. And I also one more thing to note, one thing that I was looking out for as an interviewer is consistent testing. So that's also good. Every time you made some change, you did test quickly before, like, okay, yeah, this should just pass. You were consistently testing. So that's also very important when looking at an interview coding question. Yep. You may stop sharing.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yep. What about you, Avery? Like, what was going on in your mind as you were doing this?
Actually, so what was going on in my mind is to make sure that, like, as I'm typing, that you can follow through, like the interview can follow my kind of train of thought. I mean, I think in your normal pair programming situation, you will often explain what's going on in your mind as well, so that you're not kind of just blindly coding away. But yeah, that was actually my main focus, that I can make sure both of us are on the same page. So yeah. Cool.
Sorry. And just to add on, like in an actual interview, I would actually have asked even more questions like, oh, why would you use effect? Why wouldn't you use, just setting of state and introduce a new state itself, and like things like that. So I did for like the convenience of time, I did not ask too many questions, but to just show you a gist of what you should be preparing for such an interview round. Yep.
Okay. Before we move on to the next round, I saw that Ella's asked some questions in the chat. She's asked, if we compress the images using the tools mentioned, how much will the quality be affected? So with these two tools, the main goal is to make sure that your quality of the image is still preserved. If you compress the image and you find that the quality is actually being compromised, I would suggest, before you compress the images, save a backup copy. And if the images quality is really, really bad, you can tweak the settings again, because both tools allow you to kind of tweak some settings, maybe like don't do this compression, that kind of stuff, how much compression you want, what kind of compression format you want to use, that kind. So there's often ways to at least compress some images without compromising too much on the quality. Yeah, there's always settings you can kind of tweak around. So yep. Moving on to pair programming round 2. So pair programming round 2 will often either turn out to be quite the same as the previous round, pair programming round 1, where they would test your theory knowledge and get you to write some lines of code. It's either this, or at least in my past few interviews, it's a systems design round. So if you've attended the previous InterviewReady series on systems design, you might have learned a thing or two about acing those interviews. This one I'm going to talk about is more front-end related, and they will often test your requirements gathering skills, or sort of your REST API knowledge. They want to understand, how much you know about how the client and server communicate, like how you construct the page, what kind of information is required to populate a certain component on the page with data and stuff. So with that, we will move on to the mock interview demo round 3, which is the last round.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll start the mock interview round. I'm the interviewer. So hi, Avery. Can you build a search page? Something simple with a header, footer, company logo, search bar, and search results. So somewhat like a Google search page, but yeah, header, footer, company logo, search bar, search results. And what will the API request and response look like?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm using this mirror board. First, okay, I will kind of just draw out the how the page look. Wait, I'll draw a basic rectangle to represent the browser. And then I will have my header, okay, Google has their header. I mean, it's not really a rectangle, but think of it as like the area. Within that, I will have a Google logo. I'm kind of drawing the rectangles as an indication that this is a component, not necessarily like it will appear like with a box on the page. So this is the
a React component, you mean? Like a UI component?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so this will be the logo, and this will be the search bar. And then this will be my search results, like this. And this will be my footer. Okay. So I'm just gonna point to here. Oh my gosh. Wait, I'm not doing this right. I'm gonna just point to this, that this is the header component. Okay, search footer component. Okay, so the search results. So I'm assuming for this page, because it's the search results page, then there will already be the search term here, I guess. Right? Sorry, Saloni, I think you're muted. If you answer my question. Okay.
So search term as in,
like, for example,
initially?
Because you mentioned that this is the search results page, like I need to have a search results component. I imagine that, like, for example, these will be my search results. Then if I'm already displaying search results, then I should have a search ongoing, right? Then I think in here there will be my search term. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, search bar with search term. Search results like this. And okay, so this page would be this page would, when you make at least the URL would be website.com/ maybe something like query in the query param. Let's say I search for cups, and this would have been a post request, and then the rest. This would be okay. Maybe if I draw on the side, actually, this would have been a post request. Can you see? I'm on the right side, actually. If you kind of zoom out a little bit, or if you click, can you click on follow my cursor? I think, yeah. If you click on my avatar, I think it should follow my cursor. Okay. So, okay. So this would be a post request with the body, I'm gonna say something like this. Body query. Oh my god, this is terrible. Query cups. Post. This will make a post request the search API with the query cups, and then it will return a response with maybe like with the key results, and inside it would be an array of several objects, and each object would have, for example, I think the title, okay, I'm just for like simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna write title string, then like URL string. Do I need do I need anything else for the sake of this test?
No, looks good.
Okay.
You mean in terms of the API, right?
The response, like
the title and the URL and maybe the description.
Okay.
And sometimes you even have like the URL image that appears. I forgot the name of it.
So
preview.
The preview. Okay. But so okay. I mean, I think some websites don't have the preview.
In that case, then you can show like the logo of the fave icon.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna say okay, preview. Maybe because it's an image.
Yeah.
So something like string optional. And the fave icon. I think also a string optional. Something like this. Okay. Yeah, I would say kind of something like this.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Actually, so I mean, this is for the main page, but then within each, I guess it depends on what kind of websites you're rendering. The footer component, for most websites, it should be a static component, so all the links and everything should be already static. But I think for websites like magazine websites or blog websites, often they will want to, for SEO purposes, they will want to include some like recent article links or the most popular article links in the bottom of in the footer container. So I think for those ones, they might have a separate GET request to the footer component links API, for example. It depends on how they want to set it up to fetch the latest links to display in the footer component. But I think for general, like most websites, they should already be like a static component. And I think Google doesn't have any, Google isn't really a blog site, so they will likely also have a static footer component. So there will be no API requests there. Yeah.
Yep, that is valid.
And I think I think actually maybe on top of the results, I will also have results like, no, because so I'm thinking here actually the pagination. So pagination. So the number of pages would be, actually I should maybe put that in. Number of, okay, I'm not actually sure if this should be calculated via the length of the results or if I should send a separate variable. I think I will go with the length of results. And then I would have next page URL, which is a string. So this would be, this would link to page 2 of the search results. And that means that I also need to add the offset, which is a number. So the offset is essentially like when you go to the next page. Yeah, no, actually current. Sorry, I'm confusing myself a little bit here. Essentially what I'm trying to do is make sure I render the right. Actually, in that case, I don't need offset because I'm going by URL. I will have current page number. Okay, so that in my pagination component, I can indicate that we are on page whatever number. Okay, I think that's it. I don't want to complicate it too much. I think, is this okay?
What is the rationale behind using like a next page URL versus the offset and basically the offset and like the current page size way?
So I think I chose this one. The alternative would be I think having sort of a hash like a hash and then a cursor kind of situation, like a linked list almost. But I think that because the search results don't get updated so often, unlike, for example, if you search stuff on Carousel where people keep uploading things to sell every time, so the search results change very quickly. Google results don't change as quickly, I would imagine, so I didn't see the need to implement that offset cursor pagination solution because I think that can get quite complicated. That's why I thought maybe having the next page URL might be more straightforward and easier to implement. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so yeah, you're assuming that it doesn't change as often, therefore. And this next page URL would basically be like google.com/2. And then the 2 would automatically just show the next 10 results, right?
Actually, that reminds me, I probably need to do the previous page. Hey, oh my god, okay, I just realized. Okay, I was gonna say I will do the previous page URL, but then I just realized my flaw here, which is that what will be rendered in the pagination thing would likely look like this. So I have my previous page link, the current page number, and the next page. This, I guess, this can get a bit complicated. I think the current Google setup is like this, right? And then more, and then like 9. Should I try coming up with a solution for this, or would it, for the sake of this test, do we do something like this?
I'm
I'm
okay
okay.
if you want to stick to the current solution with the assumption that the results do not change as often.
Okay. Okay. Okay, then I will stick to this, and I will like this. Okay.
Okay. So is it true that in the next page URL you would store www.google.com/a number, like number 2, and then previous page is also www.google.com/1.
I think this would this is, I would say, up to the backend developers to see how they would like to implement this API. I guess, I mean, I'm assuming for this, I would render whatever the backend developers provide. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like this.
Okay. Yep. In that case, I will let's like close this mock session and let's do an analysis and then take questions from the Zoom chat.
Okay.
Is that okay? Was there anything you wanted to add, Avery?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. So maybe I'll start with like my analysis as an interviewer. I really like that you knew how to use our interviewing tool, which is Miro, and you used it quite seamlessly. And I understand exactly what you were doing. So that's good. You were able to nicely modularize your components. And then, yeah, so in terms of like the API, you got it's a post, you use query and with the results. Yep, so yep. At the pagination part, yes, there was some struggling there, but you were able to still validate what you are thinking. So you had an assumption that it doesn't change often, therefore I use this method, which is completely valid. I could have asked you, okay, yeah, that's not the way we want. It is rapidly changing. Then what would you do? But yeah, do be ready for such things. Then, and yeah, usually as a front-end in developer, I would refrain from saying things like, I would do what the backend developer provide to us, because, I mean, so it depends. Certain companies, certain projects should be front-end driven. So
Okay.
you, as a front-end developer, we should be telling the backend developer what we require. So if you think that next page URL, the whole URL is inconvenient to be used on the front end, then we should be dictating, no, I would like the offset way, or I would just want you to pass me the previous page number and the next page number. So yeah, as an interviewer, I might be looking out for those things. So yeah, that's something I observed. And yep, that would be all. Like, I really liked the way you explained things. It was clear. You allowed me to ask you questions in between, because there are some interviewees just go on and on and on and on about their own things. So at least you asked me if, like, is this correct? Is this what you wanted? Like, is there anything you want to add? So that was good. You stopped and made sure you're on point. Yep, I think we can then move to your analysis as an interviewee.
So I think that basically writing out my, like, the data structures bit, like for example here, is I think quite important. basically to explicitly indicate what I'm talking about as well. I guess if there's one take-home point for the whole of this InterviewReady series is to be as explicit as possible, because you don't want to, you want to make sure that your interviewer understands you really well. I think, I don't really have that much as an interviewee.
No problem. Also, one more thing to just highlight, like what I learned from my own experience from doing these system design rounds with API kind questions. It's really important to state the data type. So like title is a string, URL is a string, preview image is a string, things like that. Like some could be integers, like current page number, for example, could be a number in integer. So like these kind of things we do look at as an interviewer, that you know your data types, and optional and mandatory stuff. So yeah, the question mark there was good. Yeah. Okay, let's take questions from the Zoom chat. So oh yeah, Nayana, yes, I do notice that, yeah, the system design recording, do follow us on our socials. I will post it there. I do have to like get the recording link first. I have not done that. I'll post it on our Twitter. Mainly Twitter and Facebook maybe. So yeah, do look out at our socials. I'll do that. Next is Anne. So yes, are these questions, these interview questions, is it more for senior or junior roles?
I guess I can take this. Actually, I guess for full disclosure, in the interviews that I've taken the past few months, they were for a senior role. But I would say they can ask sort of a variation of these similar topics for a junior role, except maybe with less, I guess, complex topics such as pagination. I think that can get pretty complicated to a certain point. But you could also work on simple, like drawing up the components and like indicating that this is like a micro front end setup. Like you have your search results component, you have your sidebar, that kind of stuff. Like identifying these things will also be unlikely, I think, part of the junior developer interviews. I suppose they will kind of just ask questions in a similar topics, but not as, you might not dive too deep into into the question itself.
Yeah. I would also say, similar questions for both senior and juniors, and maybe seniors we would drill even more, like exactly why, like what is the format at which image is transferred via a REST API, like even more drilled down questions that we would expect a more experienced person should know. But the basis is, the foundation will still be the same. I will still ask these kind of system design questions. I wouldn't expect like exactly the correct answer, or it could be a little wrong, as long as I can see that the interviewee has some understanding or is coming from the correct direction. Yeah. But I guess, these questions, as Avery said, I would say it's like mid-range developer, not too junior as well. Yeah. Next we have Isha. Isha is asking, do you have any thoughts on using post versus get for a search request?
Actually, I would say that after you mentioned this, I feel like I might have panicked a little bit at the start of this mock interview. I don't think I've actually implemented search on my own before, because search is a super complicated thing. So I always use like Algolia or Elasticsearch or something. But after kind of thinking about it, search requests should kind of ideally be a get, but then because when you use a get request, you are essentially just fetching whatever data that the database has. And if you post, you are kind of creating an entity, I suppose, in that database, for example. And with every search, you don't want to, actually, I feel like this could be a little bit more complicated than I thought it would be. I guess the advantage with posts is that you can send a rather complex search query because, for example, you have different filters going on, and to fit all of that in the GET request, in the request sort of like URL maybe would be pretty extensive. But on the other hand, if you use a GET request, you can sort of you can bookmark this URL, because when you send a post request, everything is sort of hidden in the request body. Actually, yeah, I guess I'm actually not. Yeah, I'm actually not the most. I'm not so sure. I think there's trade-offs actually.
Yeah, and you rightfully mentioned them. In this case, if you are showing the example of just query and it's a search term, you should have used get. But yes, you have defended yourself by saying that there could be more complex filters and stuff. So yeah. Also, another thing you could have mentioned is that we could also pass in an image as a search term. So nowadays we can just like click an image and it searches the image, right? So in that case also, we might not be able to pass an entire image byte stream into a get. So then we can use post. But yeah, it should have been a post. It should have been a get if it's just a query search term.
Yeah, I suppose search itself is it might have been a tricky thing. That's why you've got companies like Agolia that their entire product is search. So yeah.
Good catch, Isha.
Okay, so Tari's got a question. Any tip for junior front end that have hard time to explain the technical part coding? Do you mean this by explaining what you have written, or like your sort of your own solution, or what you have in your mind trying to explain this? Yeah, actually, I guess
coding part, I guess.
Okay. I would say sometimes if it includes like states or iterations or something like that, you can sort of type out, exactly at which iteration how this object looks like. So it's there's some sort of visualization that's going on. Either that, or you can maybe draw, shapes. Anything sort of to help with the visualization of what the program is doing would really help, I think. Or if you maybe could if you could elaborate on like why you're finding it hard to explain the technical part, then maybe we can try and tackle it.
Yeah, sorry, Tari. The question is a bit unclear. Maybe you can just elaborate a bit more. Meanwhile, there's one more question you missed, Avery, from Eileen. So what's a good time limit for a system design question like this?
Actually, or at least in my past experience, when I would just keep going on until they tell me that the time limit is up, because well, I've interviewed people in the past as well, and often I'm the one kind of keeping track of the time limit. So as an interviewee, you just focus on acing the interview. You don't have to worry so much about keeping time. The whole session would likely be sort of run by your interviewer, so you won't have to think about that too much as an interviewee, I would say.
Yeah, but it's usually like the system design round is usually its own round, and it would be about 40 minutes, I would say. And actually, like on on the contrary to what Avery said, I would actually think interviewees should take note of the time, because you
Mm,
need to make sure you like hit the points that the interviewer wants you to hit. So you should know like how much time you have left. So if, for example, if you was if it's like 20 minutes in and you're still drawing the components, you're probably on
mm,
the wrong track, because there's still the API part you have to tackle. And
mm,
in the API part, there will be a lot more questions. The drawing part should have been like shorter. So yeah, you should take note of the timing. But I would say 40 minutes, and your interview should tell you how much time you have. So it would be like, okay, hi, it's gonna be a 40-minute system design round. Or you can ask,
mm.
just to be sure that you want to make sure you hit the points that the interviewer asked for in that time period.
Cool. So Anne, I do see your question, but there is one last round one last round of the slides that I want to finish before we kind of tackle the Q&A. So I think I'll just finish those first, and then we can answer all the questions all together at the end, if that's good. So the last round of the interview often consists of the engineering manager round or the bar raiser round. Some companies like to call it bar raiser, barkeeper. It's similar to the behavioral session round that is conducted 2 sessions ago, and they like to. For this round, it's sort of a cultural round. You want to see if you fit in their team culturally, and if you can work well, like what your working style is like, that kind of stuff. The 2 questions that I get very often are, what is the most challenging thing you've worked on, and how do you resolve a workplace conflict? There are a ton of good response examples online, so I won't repeat those here, but I will talk about the 2 questions that I got when I was interviewing back in February. One of it is, how do you handle service ownership as the company grows? I thought, I want to talk about this question because often during these engineering manager rounds, there are no right or wrong answers. The engineering manager mainly wants to see how you kind of interact with them, how you rationalize your thoughts, how you communicate, how you weigh your options. You can, like, for example, right, for this question, my previous company adopted a structure where one team would focus on one product from start to end, including conception, development, testing, implementation, maintenance, and the roadmap and everything. This company that asked me this question, they had a structure where one team would focus on implementation of a feature, and then the other team would focus on the tech, that basically maintenance of the same feature. So there isn't really a right or wrong answer to this. It kind of is just how you discuss and go about this question. And like I said, they don't expect you to come up with a solution within this whole chat. They just want to see if you can communicate your ideas very well. The second question was actually, what methodologies do you use when you mentor people? So next slide, please. This role that I interviewed for was more of a senior role, and I guess when you do like work towards a higher level, mentoring will be a topic that comes up every now and then, because you are now not only responsible for your own work, but you're also responsible for your team's growth. So especially your junior developers. I personally have only done informal mentoring back at my previous company, so I wasn't really too sure if there were any named formal methodologies. I would just say that I will be fairly consistent in checking in with my juniors every now and then, make sure that they know that I'm available for questions if they are ever stuck and stuff like that. So basically consistency and presence. Basically this pretty much covers what I have for engineering manager rounds, because I'm pretty sure you can find a ton of topics online, or a ton of not topics, a ton of examples on how to, like, what kind of questions they can ask you online. So I just want to talk a little bit about what questions you can ask your interviewers when you go for an interview. In my opinion, like when you go for an interview, you are not only letting the company assess whether you are a good fit for them, but you kind of also want to check if the company is a good fit for you. So this, I would say, might not be the case for everyone. I think some people are content with just landing a job, but I prefer to sort of ensure that if I do get the position, that the company and the team will provide a good environment for me to work in, because after all, you are spending quite a decent amount of time at this company, and you don't want to have to dread, coming to work every day and having to deal with like workplace drama and that kind of stuff. I've read some articles online or like forums saying that maybe you should ask X, Y, Z questions, like I don't know, some specific questions to impress your interviewer, but I don't think that's necessary. What you should ask is questions that you genuinely are interested to know. For example, I'm interested to know how teams share knowledge and if this is a common practice. So what I'm looking for here is whether or not there are good documentation for the processes or technology, and like especially historical legacy code, stuff like that, or if there are recurring demo sessions where you demo the code that you've made, that you've written, or like the product that you've made, or knowledge sharing sessions, or even just a post-mortem session. So post-mortem is when you have an incident at work, like for example, your page crashed, or like there's a blackout, or like it's 404 everywhere. And after you fix this, you kind of have a session to go through, okay, what went wrong? What can we do better in the future? And stuff like that. That's post-mortem. As with any job, you are always learning. So these sessions are a good indication of whether or not your company has a good culture of sharing knowledge, ensuring that everyone, stays up to date with latest technologies or like stuff like that. I would say it's even better if these sessions are often recorded and archived, because it's good to reference to in the future. Next question is, what does career progression at a company look like? I like to, I like to kind of see that if I were to join a company, I'm not gonna just be doing the same work over and over again. I like to see that, I like to know if I'm able to grow and take on more senior roles in the future. And a good indication of career progression is whether or not they conduct regular performance reviews. I think it's also good if a company has a development rubric to know, for example, for level 1 engineers, you need to do this, your expectations are this. For level 2, it's a certain set of expectations. For level 3, it's this, level 4 is this. So you know that once you have fulfilled, certain points of a level 3 engineer, for example, that you know that, okay, this is my level, and you can start looking at the next level to start achieving those, and you can use that as a, as a way to ask your manager for some career progression. The last question that I actually really like to ask is, what is the ratio of male to female engineers in your team? All my interviewers so far have been male, and I actually have been told that this question really stumped them because they don't expect this question at all. When I ask this question, right, I don't actually have an ulterior motive. When I ask this, I genuinely am curious about, how many female engineers there are in the team, because it's always nice to know, if you join a team, are you going to be the only girl? Especially, this is this is why we have this Women Who Code, community, right? Because we want to try and raise more awareness for like women in tech and make sure that eventually the ratio will be balanced out. Eventually, hopefully, it will be 50-50. I think when I ask this question, it will only truly be a red flag if they say stuff like, oh, there's one female engineer in a team of 100. And then that will only be like, only that would that be something that I'm concerned about. I often also actually really appreciate it if the interviewer recognizes that the disparity is being addressed. So I know that they are taking action to sort of improve this. Actually, yeah, and this is pretty much it. So this is all the content I prepared for this front-end interview ready series. And I think now we can move on to the Q&A if there's any left. So I think, right, yeah. So Anne has asked, if a company sends you a full stack project to complete when you apply for a front end, what is their ideology behind it? I can kind of give my opinion, and then Saloni, maybe you can give yours after, because maybe we can have different. We will likely have different opinions about this. I would think that if they do send you a full stack project, even though you are applying for front end, you can always kind of clarify and email them and say that, or ask maybe even if you are really required to complete the backend section of the full stack interview because you are applying for the front end role. If they, I think, yeah, you ideally to kind of clarify with them and say that your strong suit is front end. So you don't think that it would be a good assessment of your skills if you were to spend some time working on something that isn't your strong suit anyway. So bottom line is to clarify, email back and clarify. Saloni, what do you think?
Yeah, actually exactly the same. I would also, I don't know what the ideology is behind it, but yeah, I would also check again with the interviewer if they really want us to implement the backend as well. But usually from front end roles, I would expect the API to be provided. Yeah. So these questions are not just for us, like people in the audience. If you know the answer, if you can help each other out, please do. Like, this is an open community. We are here to help each other out. So yeah, do try to help.
So Eileen has asked, how much data structures and algorithms should we know as front-end engineers? I would say enough so that you can tackle, I guess depending on your level, you can at least tackle your HackerRank LeetCode questions within the hour. I think, I mean, personally, I think it's something data structure and algorithms are something that you need to know anyway. So there are definitely some, advanced algorithms and stuff, but to me, engineering doesn't just involve data structures and algorithms. It also involves the whole structure of designing a system and understanding the language and understanding how to use a framework and stuff like that. So I don't have a set number to give you, but what I would say is enough for you to answer HackerRank questions within the hour. Saloni, what do you think?
I actually think definitely you should know some TS and algorithm, but it actually depends on the company you want to work at. So for example, the Mang, I mean the old Fang right now, they definitely, whether you're front end or a back end, they will definitely ask you the data structure algorithm questions, and you have to finish them one question in 20 minutes, I believe. So it really depends. For example, some companies don't even ask any data structure algorithm question. They jump right straight into take-home assignment, which is just implementing an actual project, which is basically what you would be doing at work. So it's very different from companies to companies. So it's always depends on which kind of company do you want to work at, and then see the interview process and just work towards that. But whether or not you do apply for interviews or not, I would still recommend everyone to always keep practicing LeetCode just to be on top of things, just to always be interview ready. And also my personal experience, I try to revise my data structure and algorithm weekly, like with my friends, my software developer friends. We'll just do one question every week together. It actually does make me a little bit smarter at work. I feel like I actually care whether or not I use a list or versus a map or a hash map in my day-to-day work as well. And like time complexity, things like that. Like, why would I do like a double for loop when I can just change the data structure and save time in that sense? So yeah, it's always a good trait to have as a software developer. But yeah, so like to answer your question, depends on the company you're trying to get into. That's how much D, S, and A you should be doing.
Second question by Eileen is, how is a portfolio important for senior roles? In my experience, a portfolio, as in like, I guess, your own personal projects, they aren't as important for a senior role as it is for a junior position, I would say, because as you progress into a senior role, like I said before, like your responsibilities isn't just yourself, it's your team and how you interact with other people as well. Because when you need to take care of your team's like development knowledge, you need to grow everyone. There has to be some sort of level of like interacting with for example, other teams to work on projects together, or even your juniors to kind of pass knowledge to them. At least this is in my experience, that personal projects might not be as important. Saloni, what do you think?
Yeah, I have not come across any company that asked me for a portfolio. I am a full stack developer, so yeah, I haven't had any. But I do know some of my friends who do have a portfolio, which is in portfolio, I mean GitHub. Their GitHub profile is full of open source contributions or their own libraries that they have published and stuff. I guess it does give them an edge if they do put it on their resume, and if they are like a tech influencer or something, like they've written lots of articles, it definitely would give you an edge. So I would recommend, if you can, if you have the time, do prepare a portfolio in like your GitHub contributions and stuff should be above the average. It would definitely give you an edge, but I don't think it's a must.
Yeah. Ella asks, as an interviewer, what are some red flags you are looking for in the behavioral/engineering manager rounds? While I think about this, Saloni, do you have any answers for this?
Yeah, so we actually did a round of InterviewReady series on just the behavioral round. So we did share a lot of these red flags. Like a few, like from like the top of my head would be, don't lie. Even if you lie, make sure you have prepared the lie properly. Lie as in like, if someone asks you, describe a time when you had to, when you made a mistake at work, when you did something and then your colleague took credit of your work. So if it has never happened to you, don't lie that, oh yeah, I did this and then something happened, because they might ask follow-up questions and you might get stunned, and it's a bit easy to tell if you're lying. So that would be a red flag, definitely. So do prepare your scenarios beforehand. And another red flag would be, usually the first behavioral question we ask is like, describe yourself, like introduce yourself. Don't talk about irrelevant things like, oh yeah, I'm this thing, and then I have a dog and I love my dog and I go walking with him every time. Like too much of it would not be good. I mean, I'm just saying generic, general red flags that I remember from the behavioral round interview ready series that I did. But yeah, one tip though I would like to share for the behavioral manager rounds is that it will be good if you like just Google for like the common questions that they ask on an Excel sheet, and then write a scenario with write examples of every single kind of question. So like questions like, or describe a time when this happened to you. uh, do write down like the scenario, and then you'll realize these scenarios you can just use again and again in different kinds of questions. So like a time when you someone else took credit for your work could also be used in a have you ever been in a conflict, things like that. So yeah, that's a tip. It's not directly answering your question, but yeah, that's just a tip I gave out at the behavioral interview series. Hope that answers you, Ella.
And the last question, kind of keeping the mind in time, how different interviewing with an engineering manager versus with an HR person? I would say that when the HR interviews you, they are looking for whether or not you are like ready to pass on to the engineering manager. They are sort of just they don't look so much out for whether or not you integrate very well with your team, because they don't know what team you're going to work on, but the engineering manager likely will. So it's more like I won't say formalities, but kind of like formalities, whereas the engineering manager would be like yeah, to see if you how you work as a team member. Yeah. I think, okay, so the next question, what if the interviewer asks if you are single? You can say that that is an inappropriate question and it's not relevant to the interview. I'm serious, because it really is irrelevant to the interview.
No, you should
You
ask
can always,
them why would you like to know that? I mean, a little bit polite. Like, oh, I'm just curious, why would you like to know that?
yeah. Has anyone ever had interview questions on CSS? Yes, I have actually. I mean, I think front-end interviews would likely consist of some form of CSS questions, because you do work with CSS fairly often. Maybe like some CSS technical bits like the specificity, or like if you use any CSS libraries, for example, and stuff like that. And what Mariana said regarding the engineering manager versus HR interview questions actually very accurate as well. That is a lot more, HR would ask less technical questions. Yep. And actually, so we have overrun by 4 minutes. I'm really sorry about this, but thank you so much for attending today's session of Interview Ready series. And do follow us on our socials. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook on that handle. You can email us at singapore@womenwhocode.com as well, and womenwhocode.com/Singapore also has a lot of our future events, and maybe even how you can join Women Who Code as a volunteer if you're interested. So yeah.
Yep. Just write to us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, or you can even just email us at singapore@womenwhocode.com if you want to join us as a volunteer, or you want to present a talk or anything. Yep, really appreciate all of you coming down and hope this has really helped you. If it has, and if you have any feedback, please do also message us on our social media as well. It would be really, really helpful to us to organize like the next few sessions, and maybe even more in-depth sessions if you would like those. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, it's me
Cool.
and you again. I think it went well.
I actually think it did go well. Yeah.
And people actually asked questions, like a lot of
Yeah.
questions. So that was good. It meant
I,
they were liking it and they
yeah.
were
I
interested.
wonder, do you know how many attendees were on Facebook? Like, no, on meetup.com actually.
Yeah, 26 or 27. So it's actually
Okay.
lower than half, which is surprising. You usually do get about 15.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, the maximum we went was 11. And they all
Mm.
actually stayed almost till 8 p.m.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good.
I saw that. I'm pretty, yeah, it's went well. So
Yeah, and I
thanks.
think like your content was really good. Like especially the technical questions, the answers that you gave, because you gave real life answers, and like don't be embarrassed, but you were actually, it was good that it was real, like you made mistakes. It wasn't
Yeah,
crafted. So
yeah,
it
they
was
get,
actually good that we did the impromptu
yeah.
analysis and everything. So
I mean, to be
that's
honest,
good.
I actually when Isha asked that, I saw the question, I quickly Googled what in the meantime, trying to see the answers,
I think
trying to see,
that's why you got confused because you Googled.
yeah. Um, yeah, thanks so much for organizing this with me as well. I actually yeah, went really well. I'm happy.
Oh, wait, we're recording. Oops.
Oh, right. Oh dear.